Hello everyone, I'm Vishal Salsekar and today we are going to cover the News Today articles for 7th and 8th of December. So in this discussion we are going to cover 5 articles in detail, which includes the first article regarding the multilateralism in a multipolar world. So recently the External Affairs Minister have given a statement regarding that there has been a rise of the multipolar global order, and that's why the multilateralism will be the key for future. So that's why we will discuss about the concept of multilateralism, and we will also talk about certain issues associated with the same. Then next we are going to talk about the Indian secularism, which is protecting pluralism. So we are going to see about what are the distinct feature of the Indian secularism per se, and also we are going to compare it with the Western model of secularism. UPSC had multiple time asked the questions regarding the comparison of the Indian secularism vis-a-vis the Western model of secularism. Next is regarding the understanding of the stable coin. So the cryptocurrency or the crypto in general is there in news a lot, and along with that the blockchain technology is also a very important topic, right? So in that specific context we are going to talk about the stable coins, what are these and how they are impacting the currency in general. The next is we are going to talk about the private members bill to amend the 10th schedule of the Indian Constitution. So the 10th schedule of the Indian Constitution pertaining to the anti-defection law. So there are certain changes that are being proposed by a private member bill. So we are going to talk about the concept of whip and what are the changes that are being suggested regarding whip in this particular article. Next is regarding the fire safety incidents in India or fire safety related issues in India, because whenever we are seeing that there are certain kind of irregularities are being observed or lack of following the regulation is being observed, there are certain incidents that occurs. Whether it is the coaching complexes, whether it is the restaurant, whether it is the clubs, or whether it is any type of religious gathering, we keep on seeing these particular issues regarding the fire safety related issues in India. And that's why this is a very, very important topic from the perspective of the UPSC examination to understand that. Next, then we are going to talk about in the places in news, the country Benin, right? And then there are certain other quick updates that we are going to see. So let's start the discussion with the very first article regarding the Minister of External Affairs statement regarding the multilateralism, which is mentioning regarding the multilateralism in a multipolar world. So that's why it is very, very important, because when EAM has said something in this particular context, and we are already talking about the United Nations related reforms when it has completed the 80 years since inception, right? So from the perspective of the UPSC examination, it is a very important topic, specifically from the GS2 perspective and the international relations, right? So this is going to be a very important topic. Now, talking about the concept of multilateralism, what exactly is multilateralism? So as you can also see that there are certain national priorities with countries. Now, when there are certain number of countries that are coming together in order to resolve the national priorities and in order to resolve their own common agenda through the global forums, then that particular process is known as the multilateralism. So what is this? It is the 3 or more states are coordinating their national policies to address the common challenges. For example, right now, what kind of common challenges you are able to see? The climate change is one such common challenge. Addressing the terrorism or the cross-border terrorism is one such challenge, right? So there are a lot of issues, whether it is disaster, whether it is the situations like drought, whether it is the protecting humanity, whether it is addressing the issues like poverty and hunger, right? So all these are the common challenges. And when there are certain organizations which are functioning specifically in order to resolve these things, because individual countries ke context maybe these are their national priorities, right? And when we are talking about these are known as the policies of the multilateralism, right? Now, what is unilateralism? When there is one country's agenda is kept at the highest level. So for example, let's say there is a superpower related thing and there is no other power in order to challenge that power. So the policies are going on that whatever that particular superpower wants, that policies are going to be followed at the global level. When we talk about the two countries in order to address the issues, for example, let's say maybe India and France with respect to the International Solar Alliance, they came together, they understood the importance of that particular situation of the energy crisis, and they proposed the International Solar Alliance. And that's how that bilateralism later on was recognized by multiple multiple countries, and it became an effort of multilateralism, right? So bilateralism में cooperation between two countries. Now talking about the certain institutions that you are already aware of, we have discussed it multiple times, whether United Nations for the general governance, whether it is World Bank and the IMF for the economic governance, whether it is the health governance related institutions like the World Health Organization. For the trade, it is the World Trade Organization, right? Now, talking about and having discussed about multilateralism, what are the significances of the multilateralism? So the first significance is it creates the global standard. So many such areas are there where there are national priorities are getting converged. So on those particular situation, whether it is telecommunication, whether it is aviation, whether it is the AI governance, because all the countries are going to get impacted if there will be any issues with respect to that. And hence there is a need for the global common standards, and that's what is being provided through the issue or the aspect of multilateralism. Next is regarding maintaining peace and security, because again the cross-border terrorism, in general terrorism is a major issue that is being faced by different countries. So that's why it is there. So the conflict prevention, that's there. If the conflict arises and if there are any such situation jahan par ceasefire hota hai, so the peacekeeping is also important. There is the United Nations peacekeeping forces, the arms control, because if you are going to fuel that particular war, that war is going to get intensify and that will lead to the destruction across the world, right? So that's why the arms control is also there. So that will be regarding the maintaining peace and security. Next is regarding provides the effective mechanism to address the global public goods. For example, let's say the melting of ice in Antarctica, or with respect to the issues like climate change, or maybe issues like global warming, or maybe issues like terrorism. तो जो global public goods हैं which are common to all, for example utilization of the high seas or ensuring the blue economy ki that should sustain, all these things are part of that. Lastly, underpins the successful globalization and the poverty reduction, because these are the common priorities, right? When we have seen the fruits of the globalization, we have seen the cooperation between countries, and now when countries are retreating from that particular globalization, it is going to create a difficulty for all the countries. It's not like that only one country is going to get benefited. It is going to impact all the countries with different magnitude. That's why it is also very important, and this is the significance of the multilateralism, that we can resolve these type of issues. Now, having discussed about the significance of the multilateralism, why multilateralism is right now in the crisis, that then there must be certain type of vested interest between different countries, and that's why the core philosophy or the fundamentals of the multilateralism are getting shaken. So what are these? First is regarding the great power rivalry. What is this? On one side there is United States, on the other side it is Russia-Ukraine crisis. There is intervention from the side of United States, right? United States is trying to put a deal between the Russia and Ukraine. In doing that particular thing, there are many a times resolutions also. Those resolutions are being countered, and then there is another power which is China. So it is like the great power rivalry that is already going on, and that is causing the issues with respect to the cooperation between countries on the common agenda, and that's what is the issue in the context of the multilateralism. Next is the institutions remain outdated. For example, when you talk about UNSC, it has not been reformed. When you talk about IMF, very few changes are being done, and all these things are skewed towards the Western countries. That means those countries which are the countries of global south, they still are in the demand for certain reforms, and that's why they are putting up the initiatives like UNGA at the rate 80 or the United Nations at the rate 80 in order to provide the holistic reforms in the United Nations. Next is talking about the unilateralism and the protectionism by USA. So the policies like America first, then the H-1B visa related policies, then there are immigration related policies, right? All these things, and along with that, there are certain restrictions on the other countries' people, the tariff policy and all these are ensuring the unilateralism. Because what is unilateralism? Ensuring the America's own interest by America is their unilateralism related policies. So that's why it is a harm to the multilateralism, and that's why it need to be prevented. Lastly is the alternative bloc. So there are already, when countries are seeing that the multilateralism is not giving much dividend, so that's why they are now cooperating with different alternative groups. For example, there is BRICS, the global south countries. There is Shanghai Cooperation Organization or SCO. In the context of the regional organizations, there are many other organizations. For example, BIMSTEC, for example, IORA, the region specific organizations. So all these are very important, and that shows that to some extent the multilateralism is in crisis, and that's why there is a need to ensure the alternative governance model. Now, what can be the way ahead in this particular regard? See, multilateralism is important. It has to be there, but then there should be certain changes. For example, network multilateralism. That means United Nations will be there, but then there are certain alternative agencies that are going to cooperate with the United Nations until or unless there are reforms in the United Nations structure itself. So there will be cooperation with the regional bodies. Next is the multi-stakeholder approach. So it's not only at the state level, there should be the civil society, there are the non-state actors also, obviously not in that manner जहां पर terrorist actor को involve करे, but there are many other non-state actors including the MNCs, NGOs, right? Apart from that, private sector, transnational network, all these has to be incorporated. Next is the new Bretton Woods movement. Because after World War II, when the Bretton Woods conference had taken place, it had reformed based upon the priorities of that point of time, which was the economic reconstruction, right? Right now, what type of reconstruction we need? We are having the issues with respect to climate change. We are having issues with respect to terrorism. We are having issues with respect to artificial intelligence. So all these has to be addressed. That's why the new Bretton Woods is being talked about. Lastly, the post-colonial rebalancing is needed. There are many such countries which are still in the need for their rightful share in the global governance. That has to be there. There should be true multipolarity, which is in the need for ensuring the deeper multilateralism. Jahan par it should not only be like there is a representation of country, but there should be actual incorporation of that country in the decision making. For example, mutual respect, cultural diversity. This has to be promoted in order to ensure the comprehensive global standard, right? And UPSC keeps on emphasizing whether it is about the retreat of the globalization or retreat of the multilateralism. All these themes are repeatedly being asked by UPSC. So check 2025 ka paper. There are also certain derived question based upon this, and you will get the now answers to some extent from this type of article. The next important article that we are going to discuss is regarding the Indian model of secularism, which is the protecting of pluralism without oppressing the faith. What does it exactly means? That the Indian model of secularism does not exactly oppress certain type of religions. For example, there are many religions minorities that are there in India, and we are not oppressing those particular minorities. They are having even the constitutional protection. It's not like that the religious clerics are making the laws in India. That's why we are not completely preventing religion ka utilization in the public affairs, but at the same time in the governance mode, it is the secularism which is the predominant phenomena that is still relevant in India. So from the perspective of the UPSC General Studies paper 1, in the society section, there are salient feature of Indian society, then the communalism, secularism, and the regionalism, right? So these are important. Apart from that, GS paper 2, jahan par governance and the constitution related aspects are there, and there are constitutional features, amendment, significant provision. There also you can see the aspect of the secularism, and also the comparison of the Indian constitution vis-a-vis the global constitutions. That is also a very important topic, and that has been asked repeatedly by the UPSC, right? Now, talking about what is exactly the Indian model of secularism. So see, general terms, if you talk about secularism, means the separation of the state from the religion. But the Indian mode of secularism has to be altered to some extent in order to incorporate the diversities that we are having in this particular country. And that's why it was needed that the strict separation can cause certain issues between the state and the people, because the religion is intertwined in the people in India. And that's why even if the religion remains separated from the state, it's not taking part in the day-to-day functioning, but at the same time, religious sensitivities are taken into consideration while formulating the laws. So, protecting the individual freedom and ensuring the equal citizenship without any specific favor to any of the one faith. That means it is the equal opportunities available to each and every one. That means we are ensuring that if you are following any specific religion, even at public place, you can do so, remaining in the constitutional framework. Along with that, the state will not going to alter something for any specific religion. Means they will not put you in disadvantage if you are belonging to any specific one religion. So that's what they are preventing, the religious identity also, at the same time not interfering directly in the religion. But yes, there are certain checks also that have been mentioned. If any religious practice is hampering the fundamental rights, then obviously the state can intervene to the needed extent. Now, what are the features of Indian secularism? The first is the equal respect for all the religion. That means it's not like that only one religion is having supremacy. So it's all religion which are being respected. You may profess, you may propagate, you may practice any of the religion, and you will be considered as equal. There is no such the secondary citizenship, right? Next is the principal distance, which is ensuring that state will not be completely indifferent and not be completely intertwined with the religion, but there will be a principal distance. जब तक ensure किया जा सके that there should not be any need for intervention, the state is going to do so. But when there will be a need in order to regulate certain things, the state can also do that particular thing. This is the Indian model of the principal distance. Next is regarding the freedom of religion. So the constitution under article 25 to 28 provides the freedom of religion. 25 specifically talks about the freedom to practice, propagate, and other aspects with respect to religion, right? Apart from that, the separation of the clergy from the politics. So even if the people may practice their religion, even in the public domains, there can be certain religious festivities they can ensure and they can follow. But at the same time, it's not like that the religious clergy is being included per se in the governance. So it's not like, unlike the countries like, let's say, Pakistan or Iran, there is no specific inclusion of the religious clergy. आपको religion के basis पे you are being part of the law-making body. Lastly is the reformist approach. Whenever government finds that there are certain religious practices that are hindering achieving of certain dignified set of life or maybe impacting the fundamental rights, there the state can also intervene. So the state has adopted the reformist approach. For example, let's say sati. For example, let's say many other type of cruelty against the individuals like the Bali Pratha, right? So all these things are part of this. Now, talking about the differences between the Indian and the Western model, this is a very, very important topic to be understood, and this can give you very good amount of marks whenever there is a question that is asked regarding this. So what is the basic difference between the Indian and the Western model of secularism? So the first, based upon the nature of separation. So the Indian model of secularism is based upon the principal distance model, means neither too much indifferent nor too much intertwined. On the other hand, the Western secularism is ensuring the clear-cut separation between the religion and the state. Means state is not going to interfere in the religion. Religion is also not going to be part of the state. So that is a difference. We are not completely indifferent. We may regulate, but if there is a need arises so. Next is regarding the approach. So where our approach is regarding the Sarva Dharma Sambhava, means we will be ensuring equal protection to all the religion. We will be treating all the religion at the same pedestal, but at the same time, if there is a need to regulate certain things and even certain secular affairs within the religion, that the state can do. Now, talking about the Western model, it is again based upon the strict separation. That's why there is no such interference that is there. Talking about the public role of the religion, so the religion can exist and expressed in the public spaces. This is the beauty of the Indian model of secularism. But on the other hand, in the Western world, generally it is confined to the private sphere. That in the private sphere, whatever you want to do, you can do, follow and propagate, or let's say practice any specific religion in whatever manner you want to, but in the public spaces you are not allowed to practice the religion and the associated aspects. Talking about the state intervention, now as I have talked to you about already, that we are ensuring the principal distance model. So whenever there is a need arises, the state may regulate also. So the state may regulate or reform certain religious practices that are violating the rights. For example, if there is any specific religion or practice that is performing untouchability, the state can intervene to do so, or to prevent that particular situation. Apart from that, again, certain human rights violation. So those things the state can intervene. So generally in the Western world, the state intervention is avoided, right, in the religious domain. Now talking about the objective, the Indian model of the secularism is making sure the equality, ensuring the diversity, because in the religion, within the same religion also, there are certain majority of one sect than the other sect, then there may be certain distribution. So that's why, since it is not the monotheism in the specific majority religion, and that's why it is not ensured that सिर्फ यही sect या सिर्फ यही धर्म को promote किया जाएगा. Apart from that, ensuring the social harmony, because considering the diversity of India. Now talking about the Western model, in terms of the objective, it is to prevent the religious influence in the politics, and along with that preserving the individual liberty. So they are ensuring the strict separation or the tight separation of power. Now talking about that, which particular country we are talking in the context of the this Indian model of secularism. Yes, India is the one such prominent example. When we talk about the Western model, again, हर country का अपना थोड़ा थोड़ा different model है. Each country has their own separate set of secularism, but generally these particular values that we have talked about is more suitable for the France. In US also certain differences are being observed, but broadly we can categorize that also in the Western model of secularism. But India is having its own unique model of secularism, which is ensuring the principled distance model, right? Now these are certain questions. Now see, almost every 2 years UPSC had asked the question with respect to the secularism. The question was, are tolerance, assimilation, pluralism are the key element of making of India form of the secularism? Justify your answer. Then what are the challenges to our cultural practices in the name of secularism? So they have asked the counter type of question. Then how the Indian concept of secularism is different from the Western model? Exactly same thing that was being discussed upper, right? How do the Indian debates of secularism differ from the debates on the West? So to some extent you can take content from here and certain other relevant aspects. So these are the questions, and here you can get the content directly from the article. Next article is regarding the stable coin. So the stable coins may accelerate the currency substitution, weaken the central bank control. This is being said by the IMF report, which are mentioning that when we are expanding the utilization of the stable coins, that is weakening the central bank control, because now this is under the public domain, because the currency is backed by certain fiat currency or maybe any other commodity which is the robust one. So that's what is being mentioned. We'll discuss about this particular article. Now from the perspective of UPSC GS paper 3 economic aspect mein it is important, and apart from that GS paper 2 the government related policies or the government's intervention, this particular article is important. Now talking about the first thing, that what are the stable coins. Now you might have heard of the cryptocurrencies. We have already discussed multiple times in certain previous articles regarding the cryptocurrency, that this is basically a decentralized form of currency which is in the form of the decentralized ledger. Okay, so that is the cryptocurrency. But the one such issue with respect to the cryptocurrencies are that they are too much volatile. And many a time what happens that the regulation is also lacking. So the people's confidence might be shaking up in the cryptocurrencies, and large amount of economy when being run by this type of unstable economic policies, there may be economic difficulty that may be faced by the country, and that's why the stable coins are considered as the alternative. So what are these particular stable coins? So the crypto assets designed in the context of stable coins are to ensure the stable value, as the name suggests, to have the stable values. Now how the cryptos may have the stable value? When these particular cryptos are backed by, let's say, certain fiat currency, certain type of assets, certain type of property which is having robust value. For example, let's say US dollar, maybe the robust one, right? So if the cryptocurrency is pegged with the US dollar, or pegged with the gold, or pegged with the silver, or maybe pegged with any other type of major commodity, in that particular sense it is the stable coin. So it is relative to the specific pegging, whether it may be dollar, whether it may be any other type of commodity. Now what is distinguishing them with the actual cryptocurrencies या जो normal cryptocurrencies होते हैं? So it is basically the specific pegging with the currency or maybe with commodities distinguishing them, because the cryptos are unbacked generally, right? So now talking about the issuer, so these are not issued by the central bank. There may be certain financial institutions which may issue, but not exactly the central bank, and this is where the problem comes. That suppose karo, if there is a currency which is not issued by the central bank but is pegged with, let's say, dollar or let's say gold. Now tomorrow suppose karo, if there will be people's or the person's confidence gets shaken in that particular currency, there will be selling off of that particular stable coin. अब जब वो stable coin को sell किया जाएगा, in return that is backed by the dollar or any other type of commodity, now you have to give them. Now when there will be giving of these, this may deplete the reserves of the country also. So this is the major issue. So the issuer is the centralized manner में काम करते हैं, they may be the financial institutions or the crypto firm. Now talking about the application, since we have already talked about certain things, that what are the importance of this particular stable coins in order to ensure the stability in the crypto related transactions. So it is bridging the crypto trading, because to some extent crypto trading is volatile, and that's why in order to bridge that particular issue of the volatility, there are stable coins that are being provided which are having comparatively stable values. Talking about how it is going to benefit, because if there is certain currencies jahan par stability is being insured, that can be utilized as the currency at the global level also. So it can be utilized at even the cross border payments, because if there is a confidence of public in this type of currency, then the cross border payments, maybe it can be accepted, because ultimately the backing is being provided by the underlying asset, which is generally, let's say, dollar or maybe any other type of commodity. Now what you are doing over here, for example, for dollars, let's say for $1 you are giving, let's say, 20 stable coin. I'm just giving you one random example. That means you have tokenized that particular asset, in this case dollar. Maybe let's say for gold, for 1 gram of gold you are giving 1 stable coin. So in that particular case, what is this? You are tokenizing the asset. That means now that particular token, which is available in the form of stable coin, that is having the underlying asset, which may be dollar, which may be gold. Potential for being the efficiencies to the payment. So basically this can bring the efficiency to the payment related system. So generally these are certain applications that you can talk about. Now obviously there are certain risks associated. One such thing I have already talked about, that there may be run risk. What is run risk? So if multiple people simultaneously want to draw their money back, it might lead to the fire sales, and in that particular case there will be assets that are basically being backed this particular currency. Those particular assets can also be on the fire sale, and that might cause the issue with respect to that. And see here, the importance is that this particular currency is not being regulated. The stable coins are not being regulated by the central bank, but the dollars or maybe any other type of currency might be that is backed or that is insured or regulated by the central banks. So in that particular case, their currency's value might also get affected due to the run risk. Next is regarding the currency substitution. So instead of dollar, now you want to prefer this, because this might be again having the backing of dollar. So that's why the people would want to insure this, and this will ensure the currency substitution. So it will undermine the value of actual currency. So for example, if many people will try to utilize the stable coins backed by the dollar, so in that case obviously the utilization is going to get suffer, and this is another issue. So currency sovereignty is also going to get impacted. Effectiveness might also weaken, and also it might ensure the domestic monetary policy may be impact, right? Next is the banking disintermediation. Now what bank generally do? Bank acts as a intermediary. You deposit the money in the bank accumulate that particular money and gives the loan to the people. Now in that particular case, how that loan is being given? Because you have deposited, bank is going to give you some interest, and at the higher interest, that is giving money or providing the money in the form of loan. For that, bank needs money. Now suppose if the people are going to purchase more and more stable coin, so bank ke paas now the money is not coming, hai na? So banks as the intermediary are not getting, because people are purchasing the stable coins, and in that particular case, now bank can't provide money in the form of loan. So bank ko money to chahiye in order to provide the loans. So bank will take, let's say, from any other financial institutions. When they are going to take money from the other financial institutions, wahan par they will also take it as a loan. So they will be already having to pay a large amount of interest also, and that's why that interest will be provided, or that interest will be further percolated to the people who are taking loan from bank. That people are also going to get the loan at the costly rate. So that is also impact the bank's role as the intermediary. Finally, it is regarding the financial integrity, because there is a pseudonymity in this particular context, because at the end of the day, it is the cryptocurrency guy type, right? Though it is backed by a certain type of commodity or maybe the fiat currency, but still it is anonymous to some extent, and that's why it may promote further type of transaction, which may be the hawala or any other type of transaction. So the black money wala issue is still persisting. Now what can we do? So there has already been certain solutions that are being provided. For example, promoting the central bank digital currency. This is nothing but the digital form of the actual currency, and this is being backed by the central government. Not only the currency, but the central government. It is being regulated by the central government. So this ensures the regulated framework. This ensures the proper availability of the consumer protection also. Tomorrow, if there is any default, the government or the central bank is going to give you money back. In this particular case, it's not the scenario. Next is the developing the macro financial safeguard. So see, if you are going to do too much intervention, then the economy might be at a lot of manipulation wala stage, and that's what if being done by majority of the countries, then the entire financial ecosystem of the world is going to get suffer, and that's why there is a need to ensure to some extent stability, and that's why there is a need for the macro financial safeguard. कि there should not be like run risk type of situation, so there should not be mass flight of money. Apart from that, the volatile capital flow should not be there should not be much currency substitution, so there can be some extent of pegging that can be done, or maybe there should be some limit that can be ensured in order to prevent the mass flow of the money. Payments fragmentation can also be utilized. Next is the strengthening international cooperation and harmonizing the regulatory implementation across the globe, because when you are going to utilize the currencies like the cryptos, whether it is in the form of stable coin, you will need the international cooperation, because it is going to be transacted between the national in between the national boundaries. So that's why there is a need for better regulation on this. Now, talking about the cryptos or the emergence of the new technologies, how emerging technologies and the globalization contribute to money laundering, because new ways of money laundering are getting emerged, right? Elaborate measures to tackle the problem of money laundering both at the national and international level. So it is also part of the crypto, so technology wala part, and also the internal security, because the money laundering and other is getting involved. Further, what is cryptocurrency? How does it affect the global society? Has it been affecting the Indian society also? So that's also a question based upon the cryptos. Next is regarding the private members bill to amend the 10th schedule introduced in Lok Sabha. So now, from the perspective of UPSC GS paper 2, direct linkage, Indian constitution, the parliament structure functioning, the legislative process, separation of power, these are the important articles that are in the use with respect to this particular article that we are going to discuss. Now, what happened recently, that there is a member of parliament who had introduced a private member bill in order to amend the 10th schedule of the Indian constitution, which is about the anti-defection law. So right now, what happens with respect to the parliament or the state legislative assembly, that each political party provides a concept of whip. So there is a person that is appointed as the whip, and that issues the direction to the party MLAs and MPs in order to vote in a certain manner. Now, if the party member is not going to vote in a certain manner, this will be considered as a ground to ensure the proceedings against that particular MP or MLA as per the anti-defection law. So in that particular context, this bill will allow parliamentarian to take an independent view on voting with respect to the bills or any other motion, generally right now that are being prevented by whip. So the promoting good lawmaking and freeing MP from the whip driven tyranny is the objective of this bill. Now see, when this particular whip was introduced, or basically this type of voting has been introduced, or maybe the anti-defection has been introduced, there must also be certain context to that. Aisa to nahi hai ki outrightly this has to be rejected, right? So there has to be certain things which you should also be aware of when you are going to criticize any of the things, including the anti-defection law. So why there was a need to enforce whip, or why there was a need for the laws like the anti-defection law at the first place? So the first is to prevent the unprincipled defection. What was happening previously before 1985, or kai baar aaj bhi hota hai, that member of parliament or the member of legislative assembly, what they were doing, that they were getting lured by, let's say, money, lured by certain portfolios, lured by certain ministries, and what they were doing, that they were getting elected as on the ticket of one particular party. And what they were doing, ki once after the election, they got to know that their political party is not going to form the government, or is not in a position to form the government, so they defect from the party and they join another political party, and then they retain their membership also, and then they become the minister also. So this was the type of politics which was also known as the Ayaram Gayaram politics, and that's what was the major issue, and that was basically ensuring the political horse trading, because जिसके पास कुछ member of parliament या member of legislative assemblies कम पड़ रहे हैं, they were trading the MPs and MLA in return of money that was being ensured, right? And that's why, in order to prevent the unprincipled defection, this was being ensured, this enforcing of whip and the anti-defection law. Next is ensuring the political stability. Now once the defection is there, now defection can go on in the negative direction also, or the otherwise also. So for example, there is a stable government. Now if you want to break the government, if you want to make government fall, what you will do, you will take certain MPs. How you are going to take? You will use the money, muscle power, you will try to lure them ki bhai, when we will form our government, we will give you the ministerial portfolios, and that's how you can impact the political stability also. The midterm government collapse. Lastly, promoting the party discipline, because sometimes when the government is doing something, that Indian parliamentary system provides that the MPs and MLAs के basis पर ही decide होगा that who is going to rule. basically who is going to form the government. But in that particular case, if there is no party discipline, there will be utter chaos and the anarchical situation in the political system, and that's why there was a need for ensuring to some extent the parliamentary discipline also, and in order to ensure that this was being done. So ये कुछ context है कि why anti-defection law was brought. Now, what is exactly whip? Whip is basically the direction issued by any particular political party. Now it compels that particular member to give their affirmative or the negative vote on any specific motion, any specific resolution of the parliament. Now, one of the condition that if you are not following the whip, if you are violating the whip, there can be disqualification under the 10th schedule of the Indian Constitution, which was added by the 52nd amendment, which was by the act of, or the anti-defection related act of 1985. Now the office of whip, which is not a constitutional body, neither it is a statutory body in a parliamentary statute. That means the question can be there in the prelims examination that it is being mentioned in the parliamentary statute. The answer is no. It is the constitutional office. Again, the answer is no, right? That's why it is neither a constitutional body or a constitutional status nor a statutory status under the parliamentary statute. Next is again 170th Law Commission report talked about that whip को utilize करना चाहिए only on those things which are impacting the government stability. For example, let's say there is a voting going on the anti-defection law. Yes, you should utilize the whip because that is impacting the stability of government. But suppose if there is a bill, now on that particular bill, if you are forcing all the MPs or MLAs to vote in a certain manner, obviously that is going to impact their own conscience. Ki bhai, if they want to ensure certain reforms in that, if they want to go against that particular bill, whether they are belonging to the same party doesn't matter, but these type of things should be allowed in order to ensure the good governance, right? Now, talking about the criticism, because we have understood the whip, we have understood about the importance of whip or the anti-defection. What are the criticism of this particular whip wala system? So first is it is weakening the representative democracy. For example, you may be MP or MLA, you were being elected by the electors in that particular constituency. Now in that case, electors have elected you in order to perform certain tasks. Now what you are doing, you are basically adhering only to the party line, whether you have understood what were the exact demand of your electors. So in that particular case, even if your electors want you to oppose this bill, but still because of the government, you have to support. So it is impacting the own conscience and even their electors' will. Next is the suppression of the dissent. So elected representative just act as a rubber stamp. Whether the party is saying ki bhai yes vote karo, then they have to vote yes. If the party is saying no vote karo, they have to vote. So they are acting just the rubber stamp of the party leadership. They are not individually doing something which is even going against party lines. Lastly, failure to prevent instability. Now anti-defection law ho ya fir office of whip, these were ensured in order to prevent any unstable or the unstable condition or the situation of instability. But has that happening? Many instances are there. For example, Maharashtra Assembly, jahan par the loopholes were still being utilized. So there are still a lot of loopholes or certain issues are still pertaining to this, and that's why the instability might still be there, right? So these are the criticisms of whip. Now, like this, the questions UPSC had asked in the form of the PYQs, that which of the following schedule of the constitutional provision regarding the anti-defection. So you have to write the answer. Last is regarding the President have given the condolence to the loss of life in the North Goa's nightclub fire. Now see, it's not important that the president has given the condolence, but the important is that why there are a lot of incidents, whether it is the fire incidents, water clogging, the urban congestion, the problems like traffic, the problems like pollution are happening. So many a times the issue are that there are lack of regulatory or the lack of following these particular regulations or lack of जो policies है uska implementation are one such hindrance which is preventing these particular incidents को रोकने से. So in that particular case, it is also dealing with the governance. It is also dealing with the issues like the disaster and disaster management. Now, what is the context? Let's see. Recently, there has been a fire that had broken out in the North Goa. वहाँ पर एक nightclub था. There was fire incident. The cylinder blasted, and then there were a lot of regulatory issues that came into front. That because of this, because of that, these particular situation arisen. But why these things are still being operated? And it's not like the solitary incident. Every year there are multiple incidents like this that are happening, and this is also taking a lot of lives. So if you see the data of NCRB, which is the National Crime Records Bureau, in that particular data, 7054 cases that were reported during 2023, and kitne deaths हुए, it is more than 6891 deaths which are reported. Unreported deaths bhi hote hain. So basically this is the data that you can utilize in order to write about the answers in the disaster management with respect to the specifically in the context of the fire related hazard. Now in that also, majority of the incidents are being reported in the residential complex. Why? Because generally the residential complex are being diverted in order to ensure the commercial spaces. So many a time you might have seen that there is एक दो घर नीचे बने हुए, and then there are certain institutes are getting operated. So these are the major issues, that in the residential buildings they are the commercial complexes that are being operated, and this is the major hazard. Now what are the reasons for the fire in India? So there are diversity of the reasons. Yes, there are certain natural reasons also. For example, maybe during certain months of the year there may be extreme heat, and in this particular extreme heat that combines with certain type of vulnerability may cause the fire incidents. For example, Brahmapuram waste plant जो था वहां पर 2023 में there were fire erupted. But apart from that, many of them are the man-made. For example, the design and density. So many a time the design is not ensured properly. Even the material that is being utilized in the design, that particular material itself is the inflammable material. For example, the thatched roof or maybe any other type of material that is being utilized with not taking proper consideration that if there will be fire that is going to break up. So in that case, what is going to be the solution? Next is the inadequate compliances. So many a time it happens, and we have also seen nearby only that there are a lot of coaching centers that are also being operated in the unregulated spaces. We have seen the incidents, for example, in the Mukherjee Nagar. So these are the issues that are still under unregulated spaces that are being operated, and that is causing the major issue. Many of them might not be having even the license of the, let's say, fire permit or maybe any other type of license in order to work in the commercial spaces, right? So they are not following the proper regulation. Then the limited resources. So we have also seen that there are limited resources. Whenever there will be any incident that happens, you will need the resources in the form of the human resources, you will need the monetary resources, you will need the technological resources, and there is a shortage. In 2019 it has been reported that more than 5,191 fire station and 5 lakh से ज़्यादा personals का requirement है, and this is not being fulfilled. Lastly, there are lack of awareness that what may be the SOPs. The people might not be aware that much about what should do. Like in this particular incident also, many of the people rushed towards the kitchen, which was the main source, and that's why many of the people got burnt also, right? And the database, centralized database, the vulnerability tracker, right? All these things are still missing from the Indian scenario, and that's why these incidents are taking the major havoc, right? Now when we talk about the existing fire regulations, so there are certain fire safety related regulations which are already being done, but the implementation is one such issue, and in that obviously the corruption is one such issue jahan par कुछ ले देके काम चल जाता है, and that's why there is this particular issues that are going on. So when we talk about the constitutional provisions, constitution under the 12th schedule of the Indian Constitution talks about that the urban governance has to incorporate these things also, and under the article 243 the state is being provided the power in order to regulate those particular things. Then the National Building Code, which is mandatory for the states as per the BIS standard, Bureau of Indian Standards के हिसाब से guidelines for the fire safety, there has to be the adequate equipments, there should be the proper fire exit, should be there, fire drills and the mock drills should be conducted at the regular interval, right? The model building bylaws, right? Again, those are talking about the similar things with respect to the under the ambit of the Ministry of Housing and the Urban Affairs, and in that particular sense, Ministry of the Housing and Urban Affairs again talked about that there should be proper standards, there should be proper regulation, there should be proper spaces, there should be separate entry, separate exit in those particular buildings, right? Not utilization of the private and the residential buildings for the commercial purposes. Then the scheme for the expansion and the modernization of the fire services in the states under the Ministry of Home Affairs. So again, expansion and the modernization of fire services, because equipments also are need to be modernized in order to tackle the major issues. Now again, what should be the way ahead in this particular regard? First is the technological integration. Till the point of time you are not going to utilize the technology which is there in order to aid you in these type of situation, you will not be able to deal with this situation properly. That's why artificial intelligence based risk assessment that if the temperature goes beyond this, if these situations are being met, then we can predict through a modeling of the artificial intelligence based system ki bhai which areas are more vulnerable. Mobile application regarding this can also be ensured. Optimization of the fire station placement. So it should not be that they are concentrated in one patch only. There should be equitable resources that should be deployed at different places. Along with that, those people should also be very well trained in order to deal with these situations. Again, urban congestion is one such issue which prevents the accessibility of these vehicles to the last mile, right? And that's why those also should be taken into consideration in securing funding. There are a lot of equipment that has to be modernized, so in that case there is a need for the fire related tax that can be introduced in order to ensure the funding for the updating equipments infrastructure, right? Then there is ensuring compliance, which is very important, very basic, but still this particular negligence that is being there in order to ensure the compliance. So the proper scrutiny before sanctioning, there should be proper NOCs, accountability mechanism, that if the civil servants found involved in that, there should be the proper accountability that should be ensured. But generally what happens that after the incidents, these particular situations occur. Before that, if they are occurring, the incident might not have taken place. Lastly, the best practices. There are many such countries who are doing good. Now see, again, there are, ऐसा नहीं है कि वहां इंसिडेंट नहीं होता. फॉर एग्जाम्पल चाइना, वन ऑफ द कंट्री विच इज इंश्योरिंग द बेस्ट प्रैक्टिसेस, बट देयर वर ऑल्सो द इश्यूज लाइक रिसेंटली वी हैड सीन द फायर इंसिडेंट्स, बट देन दोज पर्टिकुलर इंसिडेंट्स के बेसिस पे देन देयर इज स्ट्रिक्ट रेगुलेशन दैट इज बीइंग इंश्योर्ड. दैट ऑल्सो हैज टू बी देयर इन इंडिया इन ऑर्डर टू प्रिवेंट इन फ्यूचर no such incidents like this should occur. Now next is the places in news, and in the places in news there is the place which is Benin. The capital city is the Porto Novo. Now you can see the region of Benin. It is touching the Atlantic Ocean. यहाँ पे Gulf of Guinea है, right? Now the countries which are touching Benin is, there is Togo here. Now Ghana is not touching. There is Togo. There is Burkina Faso. There is Niger, and then there is Nigeria. So the context is that recently there was a failed attempt of coup in the Benin. Now see, UPSC in 23 and 24 they had asked the prelims question regarding the coup attempt in the Sahel region or the Africa wala region, Central African region. So that's why this is again important, because based upon these only UPSC asked the question. So there was a coup attempt. Land boundaries mein Niger, Nigeria, Togo and Burkina Faso. Then the maritime boundary, which are the maritime boundaries? So Atlantic Ocean ko touch karta hai from the southern part, right? So there is the coastline of the Bight of Benin, right, which is the part of the Gulf of Guinea, Atlantic Ocean. So which particular ocean it touches? It's not a landlocked country, it is touching the Atlantic Ocean. The sandy coastal transition area to the La Terre de Bere plateau. So it is a iron rich plateau which is found in the Togo and Benin के region में पाया जाता है, and this particular plateau is iron rich. Then talking about the mountains, Atakora mountains are there, which is a branch of the Togo mountains. Now talking about the highest point, which is the Mount Sogbaro, and then there is a river also. So rivers mein Niger is there, then Ome is there. So see, again, I would say that very minor details are not important, but just an observation with respect to this can help you in order to solve the question, right? Now, having discussed about the places in news, let's discuss the quick updates. First is this is regarding the Shyok tunnel. Now whenever there is tunnel, whenever there is pass which is in the news, you should be having certain idea that which particular places it is connecting, which particular region it is situated in, and what type of organization has constructed. So Defense Minister has inaugurated 125 border infrastructure projects, जिसमें Shyok tunnel भी one such project hai. Now it is situated on the Durbuk Shyok Daulat Beg Oldi. Now Daulat Beg Oldi is a very prominent place which was a conflicting region in the Tibetan region, which was one such conflicting region in the 1962 India-China war, right? So it is situated in the eastern Ladakh. तो कहाँ situated है? Ladakh में. It connects the Leh to the high altitude region of the Daulat Beg Oldi, which is situated very near to the LAC China border के पास में, right? So that's why it is important. Then Border Road Organization has constructed this. Now obviously when there is a tunnel that is being constructed, it is to facilitate the movement of troop, movement of the people. So all weather connectivity in the region which is prone to heavy snowfall, avalanches and the extreme temperature. So all weather connectivity provide करने के लिए Shyok tunnel has been constructed. Next is regarding the sulfur caves. So why they are in news? So scientists have discovered the world's largest spider web and the spider megacity inside the sulfur cave on the border between the Greece and the Albania. So in the European region, between the border between the Greece and Albania, they have found a spider mega city, right? So basically it is giving an idea about certain prominent things. For example, first is that about the spider in general, that it was considered a solitary creature, or basically was known for its solitary behavior. But through the spider web and the spider megacity, it has been now understood that they also have some social tendencies. They also are living sometimes in group now, or in the colonies. Now, which two species of the spiders were being observed here? So common house spider hai yahan pe, and apart from that, the sheet weaver spider that was available. I would say ठीक है थोड़ा, to some extent it is important. Now, what are the sulfur caves? So basically, sulfur caves are when in the water there is the amount of sulfur that is available, and that particular things is causing the erosion of the rocks, and because of that there is the cave like formation that is there, and that causes that when comes in the contact with the rock, that creates a void in the rock. So like you are seeing the limestone cave, similarly you are here seeing the sulfuric acids create hone ki wajah se sulfur caves. Now these are the caves jahan par generally the lights are not penetrating, so that's why they are being powered by the sulfur related things only. So that is powered by the sulfur springs, which is ensuring the process of chemosynthesis, jahan par lack of light ya lack of sunlight ki availability may be, they are doing the other processes including the food production, right? So this is regarding the sulfur caves. Now next is regarding the prison reform. So recently the Chief Justice of India, while speaking on the correctional reform, and suggested certain thoughtful proposals. That means jab hum baat karte hain, whenever we talk about the prison related reforms, there should be rehabilitation, there should be reintegration with the society, and that's what is ensured through the assimilation process and not by dissociating them completely with the society. So what the Chief Justice of India have talked about, first is aligning the prison training with the economy of tomorrow. We know there is artificial intelligence, there are digital technologies, right? So all these things had to be taught to the prisoners if they want to tomorrow get integrated with the society. That's why the curriculum and all these things can be designed. Deeper industry collaboration can be ensured. Next is regarding introducing the UK style electronic monitoring of convicts. So rather than utilizing those lathis and all in order to discipline them, you can utilize those particular tags. जो एक tag है that can be like wore maybe in the hands, maybe in the legs, right? So that particular tag will ensure their movement. So you can keep them in order, ensuring not the hard power utilization. Next is expanding and creating more open prisons in India, because if you are ensuring that those people in the way they were behaving, that should not continue. There should be a need for the open prisons, and for those particular open prisons you will need to inculcate that particular behavior, and that's how you can create a good society also. Last is establishing a data driven rehabilitation tracking center. So there should be obviously positive reforms that should be supported, some kind of like negative tendencies that should be suppressed, right? But yes, there is a need for establishing a data rehabilitation tracking center, so you will be able to be aware regarding what is the progress that is being made in this specific regard. Next is regarding the Hindu rate of growth. So the Prime Minister has recently criticized this particular term, the Hindu rate of growth, and mentioned that one particular religion has been considered in the negative light because of this particular term. So the term was coined by Raj Krishna in 1978. What was the objective? See, it was considered that generally the Hindu communities, they are not aspiring for too much. They are thinking that many of the things are because of their fate, and that's why they are considering the continuity of the things ki jo chal raha hai, let's continue with that particular thing, and a lot of aspiration might not be there. And on the basis of what this particular term was coined, the term was used to utilize the growth rate roughly post independence till roughly 1980s pre LPG time में जो growth थी roughly 3.5 to 4% के around, and उस terms को growth को represent करने के लिए it was mentioned as the Hindu rate of growth. You might have also seen even in the books this particular term is being mentioned. So the phrase suggests that the slow growth came from the Hindu way of life, means no much aspiration, considering that what had happened is the fate, जितना मिल रहा है उतना ठीक है. So cultural habit of accepting the fate or being content with the little. So this is what being thought about when he had proposed the term Hindu rate of growth. But right now the Prime Minister has criticized the expression that which is linked with the India's low economic performance with the faith or the identity of people, right? Next is regarding the International Atomic Energy Agency. So this is basically the nuclear watchdog of the world. It is associated with the United Nations. So 1957 में as an autonomous international organization form किया था under the United Nations in order to prevent the proliferation of the nuclear material, in order to observe that the countries are following the global standards, right? So recently IAEA has confirmed that because of the issues going on between the Russia and Ukraine, there were certain attacks or certain impact on the Chernobyl में जो the nuclear shield जो लगाई गई थी, that has also got impacted, and because of that radiation leak might also happen, right? So headquarter कहाँ है? In the Vienna, 1957, as an institution autonomous under the aegis of United Nations. Members 180 including India. Now, it helps countries in order to ensure the utilization of the nuclear technology, the safe transfer for the peaceful purposes, and preventing the proliferation or the non-proliferation of those particular nuclear technology, promoting the strict nuclear safety standards, right? Even jo NPT, the nuclear non-proliferation treaty that was being signed, under that those particular countries jo ki NPT ke member hain, and they are not the nuclear powers, in order to ensure the checking and the monitoring of their nuclear establishments, right? The jurisdiction does not include the military facilities and the non-NPT members. So this does not include these. Next is regarding the UNSC resolution. So resolution 2803, which has recently been adopted, which endorses the US-backed comprehensive plan to end the Gaza conflict. Recently, we had seen that the US, along with certain other countries, have proposed the plan, and that was also accepted as the Gaza peace plan, right? Jahan par there was ensuring of like ki now the Hamas as a terrorist organization will shed its weapon. Apart from that, there will be rebuilding, reconstruction of that particular Gaza strip. Wahan par Israel be also will utilize its own influence to some extent only, and will not invade the territory further. Peaceful resolution hoga if there is any conflict in the future that arises. So what this particular comprehensive plan included, establishing a board of peace. So this is a transitional body which will ensure till the point of time the Palestinian Authority is not going to undertake the reform in order to solve the things peacefully. Tab tak ye board of peace is going to ensure the reforms and undertake the reforms and the reconstruction. Then also calls about the resumption of the aid that is previously being suspended, but at the same time the safeguards are also being ensured that this aid should not go for the terror activities. Then there is the international stabilization forces. So for example, there are peacekeeping forces like this, the international stabilization forces that are being deployed, which authorizes the temporary force to secure the Gaza and assist the demilitarization of that region, which will also work in cooperation with Israel, Egypt, and Palestinian police, right? So this is about the UNSC resolution 2803. Next is regarding the NetGrid, which is the National Intelligence Grid, which is a database which ensures that the real-time tracking of a lot of things with respect to the terror and the intelligence sharing. So terror networks ke bare mein idea, intelligence sharing with respect to any of the threat that is being highlighted in the NetGrid. So why it is in news? Because there have been 45,000 around requests per month this particular platform or the database is having, right? Every month basis. It is an attached office of the Ministry of Home Affairs, right? It is a platform which is an IT platform for police and investigating agencies to securely access the government and the private database in the real time to counter the terror related efforts. So there are 11 central agencies including the IB, RAW, DR, ED, and apart from that the state police, they can access the data. Now who can access the data? The officer above the superintendent of police rank that can access the NetGrid wala data. Now it allow the access of the driving license, Aadhaar registration, then the airline data, banking record. So all the data with respect to those particular perpetrator of the terror, or maybe with respect to those people who are suspect, that particular data is available in the NetGrid on the real-time basis, right? So this is also a very, very important organization in order to share the data seamlessly between different organizations. Suppose karo, if state police finds someone suspect, that data is getting uploaded in the NetGrid, and that's how all the other agencies can also access the data regarding that. Next article is regarding the Washington Accord for the Peace and Prosperity. So recently there has been the United States which has proposed a deal between the DRC, which is the Democratic Republic of Congo, and the Rwanda, which is known as the Washington Accord for the Peace and Prosperity. Now there was already a conflict going on between these two regions because the Rwanda had backed the M23 rebel and जो कि attack launch कर रहे थे in the territories of DRC, and that was causing the fuel or the tension between these two countries. And now there have been a type of deal that has been signed, which is the Washington Accord for the Peace and Prosperity, mediated by US. Now what is the purpose? To restore the trust between these two countries and ensuring the lasting peace in these particular region. Why? Because the central Africa के जो ये regions है, they are the mineral rich region. For example, specifically in the mineral rich eastern DRC, such as the Katanga Manga Plateau, Kivu and Ituri region. Now DRC, which is also known as one of the prominent locations jahan pe a lot of minerals are there. But the problem is that because of the instability, the poverty and hunger still persist in these particular region. The minerals available include copper, then the cobalt, tin, tungsten, tantalum, gold, diamond. So despite having all these materials, still this particular region is in chaos, right? Lastly, it is the largest cobalt producer of the world. 70% of the global supply is being ensured from here, right? So this is regarding the Washington Accord for Peace and Prosperity. Now with this, we have completed the entire News Today discussion for the 7th and the 8th of December, right? I hope the things that we have discussed is clear to you. So now there must be certain questions, try to answer them. And also whatever we have discussed in the form of the prelims and the mains question, now try to ensure writing those things also. That will ensure a better practice and the applicability of the current affairs. So we'll meet again in the next set of discussions. Thank you everyone. Have a great day.